I don't know how this is gonna sound, but one of my buddies posted a video, and I believe the video name was something about 7 questions. So I figured I would follow suit and answer 7 questions. Question number one: what is your name? I am Aiden. How do I identify? I got little notes going on the side. I identify as male in public. I don't go out of the way to out myself, but I also don't hide it. If it comes up, I'm not going to hide it. The fact that I'm a trans male, or that I'm F to M or transgendered, I'm pretty fluid when it comes to wording. Who has been the most supportive of your transition in your family? Is how I took that. I couldn't really understand the questions that well, so it's not exactly the right question. Somebody's going to have to let me know when I'll read the answer. The most supportive people for my transition have been my oldest sister and my grandfather. My oldest sister kind of immediately didn't even really care. It seemed very natural to her. It was no big deal, and she just loved me. She's had other obstacles in her life that she's overcome, and she was the most supportive, is the only way I can say it. My grandfather grew up in a different time, and my mother has been in lesbian relationships, is lesbian, and when she had come out, my grandfather had a really hard time with it then. My family wasn't accepting of it when my mother went through it, and when I came out as a lesbian, my family was kind of used to all of it because of my mother. So by the time I came out as trans, my grandfather was kind of on this bandwagon, like, oh, it's, one more thing. He seemed to understand it more than anybody else in my family. It immediately caught on for him. He would, go about, I only have one male cousin, and he would say, oh, I saw your grandson down the store, and my grandmother would think that it was my cousin, and it was always just very fluid for him. It was always natural. And when he was on his deathbed, it was one of the last things that he said to me was that nothing really matters aside from being, the content of your character. And he was one of my closest relatives. Definitely the most supportive person in my transition. Question number 3. What do you most enjoy about your life since the beginning of your transition? I jotted down a couple of little things so that I would have some reference. Feeling comfortable in my own skin, looking in the mirror, watching all of the changes happen, being read as male, feeling a scruffy chin. Those are all the most obvious, chest surgery, being able to finally walk around. It is such a huge thing. I feel like for me, it's so big I can't even explain it anymore. I can't even think about it anymore now that I've been post-op for over a year. Even right after I had surgery, it was immediately not something I could ever, think about going back to. Automatically it was like, this is what's natural, and I can't ever go back there. I can't, immediately disassociate from the trauma of having breasts, and being male. When I first got my breasts, it was immediately a horrible thing, and I was large-chested, and I remember fighting with my mom about not wanting to wear a bra to begin with, and before I needed to wear a bra, every time we would go on vacation, I would always take my shirt off, and it was kind of like I was allowed to if it was on vacation. We go to Florida, it was hot out, and I would take my shirt off, and I was a little kid, so it didn't matter. But the second I hit puberty, so having breasts off was a huge thing as far as my transition, but I don't usually even focus on it because it's just so so much that I can't fathom going back there. When I think about one of the things that I enjoy most about my life since the beginning of my transition is seeing the hardships of males and the unspoken differences in the men that I interact with. I didn't grow up, I had my grandfather in my life, but we didn't get close until I was older, and my father died when I was really, really young, and I never really had a lot of male relationships. I have uncles, but I was never close with them. I would see them on holidays, and that was pretty much it. I never really connected with them. After my youngest cousin was born, I had a relationship with one of my uncles, but then the nephew that everybody always wanted showed up, and I went to the wayside at that point. So really understanding men on a different level has been a big joy for me as far as my own transition. Number 4. Who are your trans role models, and what do you look up to them for, was how I understood the question. It was really hard to hear the person who posted the other video. For me, this question is really hard because I transitioned without knowing that there was a trans community. I had heard of transgendered people, but I didn't know anybody when I had first started to transition. I had watched movies, so I could say that, any of these actors in these movies were role models in a sense, but it didn't really, it helped me get to where I was. As far as actual role models, since I've started transitioning, and I know some people have a hard time with the industry, but Buck Angel, for me, has been, with his PSAs and everything, has been a role model as far as his ability to accept his body the way that it is. And for me, it has been a very positive impact for me. The same with, the XX boys, and that same kind of understanding the fact that my body may not ever look like it was cisgendered either way, that I'm kind of stuck in this middle ground, and I need to love myself regardless of how I'm packaged, and they really help be role models in those ways. I had kids that I had known from here and there that had transitioned, but they weren't friends of mine. They weren't people that I hung out with, and they assisted with being role models from far away, not really active role models, not anybody who knew that they were a role model to me, other than people that were feeding me information. The only 2 people that I could name as far as actual role models that both happened after I had started my transition, after I was, through my transition quite a bit, was Matt Kiley, the author of the book Just Add Hormones, and Chaz Bono. For obvious reasons, they are fantastic role models. Question number 5. What changes would you like to see most in the world? I believe what the question was. For me, I'm really big on mindfulness. People being able to put themselves into other people's shoes. When I was in high school, I was the president of the diversity committee when I was a big lesbian, and for me, when we were writing up some paperwork, and our mission statement had said something about tolerance, and I really had a hard time with the word tolerance then, and I still do now. I'm really big on, I don't want to be tolerated, I want to be accepted. I want knowledge and acceptance. I want people to know that nobody's really different. Everybody's different in their own way, but nobody's really different. Everybody's just doing their own thing. And I feel like the transgendered experience for me, and for, as a community, clearly we're at the point now where we're trying to make headway in the medical field, where we're trying to have people understand that this is a medical condition, that this is a physical condition that has a physical ailment, and the knowledge about that, and for me that's the big issue. But how I deal with that on a regular day basis is through mindfulness, and I feel like the changes that I would like to see in the world aren't necessarily just related to me being a trans person. It's more of a holistic. I believe that the world that I live in could use a little bit more silence, a little bit more internalization is the only word that comes to mind. Like, really retreating into itself and saying, what do I need to do to fix myself? I don't know, I could go on all day about that kind of stuff. Question number 6 is, what are you doing to make those changes happen? I wrote not enough because I don't do as much as I used to, and I don't do as much as I would like. Right now, I am, to quote Michael Jackson, looking at the man in the mirror. I am trying to be the person that is the change that I seek in the world. I do try to be mindful. I do try to be knowledgeable about other people's differences, that it's not just, I could just as easily judge somebody for something else in the same way that they would judge me for being trans, and I do try to actively work on that. I do, like I said, I don't necessarily out myself, but if an opportunity presents itself to me, letting somebody know about who I am and where I come from in that way, I feel like for me it's a better transition into showing people who I am, so that they can better understand that for me this isn't, it's a medical issue. It's none of their business if I choose to divulge it to them, just as if someone was diabetic. And I'm not trying to make any, just for reference point, if somebody has a medical issue and it's nobody else's business, but how do you learn about it? Other people who have had it say, oh, I've had it. And that's what makes it normal. Other people have other conditions, and the more people that have it, the more normal it becomes, the more acceptable it becomes, the more knowledge gets out. So I do try to live a life that shows knowledge, but I'm not doing as much as I would like to in the community as far as gross knowledge, and that's a personal issue for me because I've had some pretty large detours in my life that have forced me away from that, and that's something I'm actively working on right now. And the last question, number 7, is tell us something special or unique about you, your interests, your story. I really couldn't understand the person who was posting the video before this, but that's what I think I heard, so that's what I'm going to answer for a question. It's a really hard question for me because I don't necessarily like to put myself out there. It's a battle that I'm overcoming currently. I have been forced to put myself out there, and that's why I choose not to anymore. Well, I am right now, so I guess I don't choose to, but it's why I've had a hard time with it. So as far as my personal story, my life has been filled with hardships, like anyone else's, trans or not trans. My life has been pretty consistently chaotic. I grew up in an alcoholic home. My parents separated at a young age. My father died when I was 11 years old. My family suffers from the family disease of alcoholism. I had learning disabilities as a child, dyslexia, ADD, and I choose not to medicate for them, and I have always chosen. I tried some medication for a few months and decided not to, for other reasons, but my unique story is that I'm just like everybody else, and it's not a surprise. So those are the answers to the questions.